This is Michael Ware, co-host of Where We Are, and this is a special episode of Where We Are in lieu of the Morning Five this morning, as we want to discuss the historic vote in the House yesterday to oust Speaker Kevin McCarthy from his position as Speaker, leaving the House in limbo. We'll discuss that decision, that vote, and what it means on this special episode of Where We Are.
It's the end of the weekend, but
This is Where We Are. We are the Wares. I'm Michael.
I'm Melissa.
And Melissa, again, for listeners, this is a special episode, an emergency episode, so to speak. The first time that we've done an episode of Where We Are during the week. Usually this is a weekend show.
Good morning to you.
Really thought that... Yeah, oh man, we thought that this we didn't want to wait until the weekend to discuss this development.
Yeah, this news is too fresh off the press.
It's too fresh, and thought that the Morning Five, the format, the style of the Morning Five, which is less opinion, more sort of just a very brief overview of the news, was not going to be the best thing for this moment. And so instead, Melissa and I, for 10-15 minutes, are going to discuss this historic development. And Melissa, just to give a bit of an overview, and I do think the time frame you use to discuss what happened and where you start it and where you end it, like so many of these sort of political squabbles, now this is more than a squabble. This is a historic development.
Yeah.
The time frame you use is essential. But let me just do it this way for now, which is, over the weekend, after a number of different attempts at passing some kind of stopgap, getting the votes, that a majority of the votes in the House to fund government, after taking votes that failed, Speaker McCarthy, over the weekend, sort of switched course and decided to advance a bill that he knew would receive overwhelming Democratic support, and where he'd lose significant numbers of Republicans. And that is exactly what happened. A majority of both parties supported the stopgap, with all but I think one Democrat supporting it, and somewhere in the range of 120, 130 Republicans supporting the stopgap, with like 90 Republicans or thereabouts opposing the stopgap measure. So a majority of both parties, but it was more Democrats voted to support the bill than Republicans, even though Republicans have the majority. Well, this was a moment that many people have been waiting for since Kevin McCarthy sort of won the speakership, because he did so by accepting these rules changes that allowed one member of his caucus to call for a motion to vacate.
Yes. This was back in his fight to get the speaker's position in the first place.
And there was this big debate internal to the Republican Party about whether a Republican speaker, should even bring forth measures that won't receive at least a majority. And there were a whole bunch of debates about like how much Republican support a speaker would need to justify bringing a vote forward. Matt Gaetz, who I've been referring to as evil Chandler Bing, which is something I need emotionally to do in this moment. It just brings a little bit of levity to me into this situation. So evil Chandler Bing advanced that motion to vacate, and on a quicker timeline than I think a lot of people expected, on Tuesday, October 3rd, for the first time in American history, Speaker McCarthy was removed as speaker. He was ousted.
Yeah, the vote was 216 to 210.
So the vote was 216 to 210. So very close vote. Here's what you need to know about that vote. Or at least here's something else you need to know about that vote. Every Democrat voted to oust Speaker McCarthy, and only 8 Republicans voted to do so. And so the Republican speaker was ousted by 4%, at the will of 4% of his caucus, and 100% of the Democratic caucus. For now, I'm not saying whether that's a good or a bad thing, but that's just how it happened. Just a couple more facts, which the House is now out of session. They won't return because the House can't operate without a speaker. And so the House will return mid next week, and they'll try to vote to elect a Speaker of the House. There is no real clarity. We'll see how much develops over the coming hours and days. But right now, there's no real clarity. There's no clear successor to Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. A lot of ideas are being floated. Mm-hmm. If there's any clarity, if there's any sort of someone like leading the pack, it would be Steve Scalise,
yes,
who is a very conservative, at least as conservative as Kevin McCarthy, from Louisiana. And so those are the facts. Melissa, I have a lot of thoughts. What did you think as you saw this unfold?
It was very interesting today to see around midday, like a couple of hours, I think, before the vote actually turned place. All of a sudden, you saw Representative Hakeem Jeffries, minority leader, basically tell or announce essentially that McCarthy would not receive Democratic support. And now this is a big changeover from Monday, where an outlet like Axios was actually reporting that Representative Matt Gaetz's plan to take out McCarthy was not being received well by Democrats. You have Representative Steve Cohen of Tennessee, a Democrat from Tennessee, and a member of the Progressive Caucus saying, and quote, "I'm not going to follow Matt Gaetz to Peter Luger's steakhouse," end quote. And you have others who signaled that they just weren't going to support, they were not going to be voting McCarthy out of the speakership. And then all of a sudden, basically around 24 hours later, you've got Representative Jeffries announcing that Democrats would not be keeping McCarthy in his speakership position. And so the big question is, well, what changed? And as of now, what we have is some journalists tweeting out various things around this particular issue. And one of the key ones that I've seen repeated by several journalists of, reputable outlets saying that Democrats had watched Speaker McCarthy go to the media and basically say after, Saturday's vote that, bragging about, what he got done and basically criticizing Democrats about their role. And the story is essentially that a bunch of Democrats became very upset with this media interview that McCarthy did, and it changed the tide in terms of how they were feeling towards him.
I mean, so I'll just tell you what I think when I hear that, which is that we've had 10 years, 15 years of people saying, oh, so so just because Republicans were offended by what Barack Obama said or by what, liberals on TV said, they didn't do the right thing for the country, or they wanted to, and like this very sort of, what happened to America first kind of thing, and Republicans are babies and all this kind of stuff. And so I don't take, if that's the standard, then I don't think you could say, well, he attacked us on Face the Nation. And like, we know why he attacked Democrats on Face the Nation, because if he isn't, he's the leader of the Republican Party in the House. He just took a divisive stand within his own party, so he's trying to train his party's focus on Democrats as opposed to...
He's saving face.
He's saving face within his own party. Now, you could say, like, I don't like that approach, but like this whole idea that, we would have voted to keep him in if he was nice to us on Face the Nation, but because, I mean, again, this has been for good or ill, whether it's morally neutral or not, like whatever, not whatever, but like, let's table that for now. It has been Democrats' political strategy for the last 15 years to present themselves as the reasonable, responsible folks, and implicitly and explicitly at times suggest it's the Democrats who are not responsible. McCarthy doing the same, saying that he was the reasonable ones and Democrats were ready to, put the government at risk if over their policy priorities. So yeah, I mean, that's not where I want to focus, but I do think this idea and the easy embrace of this, McCarthy made a big mistake by attacking Democrats. Well, he's a Republican. Let's not get like he's a member of the other party. Like, now we're gonna get precious about partisanship. But okay,
yeah.
there's that.
So there's that, and then the two other things. I mean, the one simple point I want to make is that Democrats, by aligning themselves with the 8 Republicans who also voted McCarthy out of the speakership role. Democrats lining up so well with the House Freedom Caucus, the ultra-conservative group of representatives in the GOP who are the ones who had this rule come about in the first place that you could call a motion to vacate. The group that has been responsible for a lot of headaches for McCarthy since he became Speaker include members like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Is that you start to sort of partner up with them, and I don't think that could ever end well for Democrats, honestly, in terms of bipartisanship, for a lot of very good things for the nation. I just want to make that simple point. And then the next thing is that our ultimate problem here is funding the government. We just had another huge fight to even get another 45-day stopgap. We still don't have a long-term solution. This has been going on for months on end now. We only have 45 days. The House cannot function without a speaker. They're having to meet next Wednesday to vote somebody in, taking their focus off of funding the government. And my concern is that for Democrats, you had somebody who was willing to make a statesman-like bipartisan decision, avert a government shutdown in which, thousands of people would be out of work, in which people would be without their various benefits. And in my mind, and I could be completely wrong here, this makes the likelihood of a real shutdown even more likely, very likely, possibly.
Yes, I agree.
And for Democrats, my automatic thinking, besides you should be rewarding somebody who has actually worked bipartisan, and through bipartisan means with you, doing the right thing for the United States, being a statesman. I mean, our politics is so petty that, for a lot of folks that's not even convincing enough. The more convincing thing to me would be the idea that we do not want a government shutdown, because government shutdown, the economy is already taking hits left and right with a bunch of different developments, like student loans coming back. Markets are really nervous right now. We've got a bunch of signs that the recession might actually finally start. The Fed will probably raise interest rates again at its next meeting, putting more pressure on the economy to have a recession. And in 2024, we all know the common wisdom is that the incumbent party will be most punished by an economic downturn because voters really vote on the economy. And I know that a lot of voters won't be able to say, oh, we have a recession because this government shutdown and the Republicans caused it. Nobody's going to be connecting those dots. They're just going to know that they have less money in their pocket, they lost their job, so on and so forth. And for Democrats to be doing this during a very tenuous election so far, when it comes to at least the polling, it just seems really short-sighted for not even longer term thing. It's really medium term, just next November, 2024. I'll end there, Michael.
Yeah. I mean, so a couple comments. I mean, I do agree that there are real effects that this could have on the election. And I'm not trying to say this in a certain way, but I think there are arguments that could be made that the electoral aspects of this could go either way. We have different sort of concerns. Mm-hmm. Look, don't hear me. I'm not a fan of Speaker McCarthy. He was he voted against certifying the election. Mm-hmm. He lifted up Marjorie Taylor Greene for leadership. I think in his view, pragmatic reasons of trying to hold his caucus together, but he still did it. And I strongly disagree. He allowed this pretty shoddy impeachment case of Biden move forward.
Yeah.
And so what you're hearing some Democrats say now is it's not a matter of choosing sides between McCarthy and Gaetz, really, because they don't view, Jamie Raskin from Maryland said this, he doesn't view much of a difference between Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy. What I would say is I can name at least one difference between them, which is that Matt Gaetz wanted to shut the government down, and Kevin McCarthy, for all of his flaws and for whatever the rationale was, or whatever his political sort of impulse was, and I have some ideas about that. Whatever the calculus was, he did the right thing here. He did the thing that basically, roughly, Democrats said was the responsible thing to do. And Republican voters and whoever the next Speaker of the House is, the lesson they are going to take from every single House Democrat voting alongside 8 Republicans to oust the Republican Speaker, the lesson that Democrats are teaching with this is not that McCarthy made a mistake by not supporting the impeachment of Trump. It's not that McCarthy made a mistake by moving forward with the impeachment of Biden. No, the lesson that's being taught here is that McCarthy made a mistake by choosing the nation over his own job. In this case. And this is the case that the motion to vacate was in response to. Matt Gaetz was leading floor debate from the Democratic side of the aisle. Like that should tell you something about what a messed up situation this was. Matt Gaetz was leading the floor debate from the Democratic side of the aisle. So, like, that's who Democrats were sided with from a very practical, objective sort of perspective. They welcome Matt Gaetz to argue from their side that was 90 whatever percent of the votes to oust McCarthy were Democratic votes, but it was initiated by Matt Gaetz. And so, like, I think Democrats have to take, I think there's a responsibility for that. I'm seeing these lines that are like, Democrats are not responsible for solving, Speaker McCarthy's difficulties or the Republican Party's difficulties. And, like, perhaps, well, I'd say I'm more, I don't accept that. I'm someone who wants to see both parties as strong as they can be. But I understand that perspective. I think it just gets the situation totally wrong, though. If we've learned anything, it's that a problem, a fire that is a fire on in the Republican Party does not stay contained to the Republican Party. Republicans' problems become America's problems. We share a country. That's what self-governance means. If one of the two major parties is as Democrats have been saying, a threat to there's an extremist wing, as President Biden would say, a MAGA Republican wing that is a threat to democracy, that is, opposed to broad swaths of the American population, then you aren't intervening to save the Republican Party. You're intervening because to protect the American people. And like Melissa and I have said, like maybe we're missing something. Maybe there is some maybe this is clear to Hakeem Jeffries how this turns out. Maybe Democrats already know who the next speaker is going to be, and it's going to be someone who loves bipartisanship, who is closer to Democrats' policy priorities, who is more likely than Kevin McCarthy to make the responsible decision. But I'll tell you, if they do that, I'll applaud it. I'll say, that's some real political gamesmanship. Like they saw a way through this to move the situation not just to Democrats' advantage, but to Americans' advantage. But right now, I don't see it. I don't see, and we're not hearing from Democrats some confidence about how this is going to turn out. No, what we're hearing from Democrats is, look at the Republicans who can't get their act together. This is a sign that Republicans can't govern. Well, that would be a much more effective argument if it wasn't only 8 Republicans who voted to oust the speaker.
And if our democracy wasn't actually fragile, we had a mob, a riot, an insurrection at the Capitol. We had an entire vote on certifying an election. Like our democracy is not, Loctite right now. And so for this to happen, for a lot of folks to be seeing this go on in this particular institution, I know a lot have come to expect chaos from Congress. And I know that opinions about Congress are historically low, but this doesn't help things.
Yeah.
It doesn't help people's faith in our institutions,
No.
our governing institutions.
No. Here,
Especially because it's historic, so people have never seen it before.
yeah. Melissa, here's like the best, we've been racking our brain. Like what are Democrats thinking here?
Yes.
And so I want to do all my, initially I thought, maybe this is all about just showing McCarthy that his job, speakership is on the line. Speaker McCarthy needing to prove that to his own caucus. And Democrats are going to make demand some reasonable concessions that McCarthy could reasonably make. McCarthy will make them. McCarthy will be speaker. And Democrats show both that they're willing to play ball with people who make responsible decisions, and they're able to get something in return for McCarthy needing their votes to remain as speaker. But within hours after the vote, McCarthy made an announcement that he won't seek the speakership again. So it's like, so that's not happening. Whether that's what Democrats wanted or not, part of the reason why you don't take a vote that provokes chaos like this is because it's chaos. So even if you had hoped that was how it was going to go, that you'd be able to negotiate with McCarthy and get him to make concessions, that it doesn't look like that's happening. And so here's the best thought that I have, which is McCarthy made this deal, which is only for 45 days, the stopgap deal over this last weekend, with the expectation and knowledge that it would strengthen his position as someone who's willing to compromise, as someone who's reasonable, and that his intention and Democrats' anticipation of what his intentions and leverage would be, that McCarthy was going to play hardball over the next 45 days to try to extract concessions from Democrats that Democrats just viewed as non-starters, using the benefit of A, again, passing the stopgap measure, but then B, having Democrats vote to maintain him as speaker. And so, like that's a rationale that makes sense to me. I'm still not sure I agree with it based on all the contingencies involved, but that's like the best reasoning that I could come up with, which is that by voting to keep McCarthy in, Democrats would be empowering McCarthy to seek to exert enough political pressure on them that they'd be forced to do, or that at least some swing district Democrats would be forced to support cuts to federal spending that would otherwise that were just unconscionable for the vast majority of Democrats. That's the best argument. And again, like I could see it. Maybe we'll see reporting that sort of makes that clear, at which case, I'm happy to like reevaluate this assessment. But I just got to say, in the 12 hours since this vote, this can go in some really bad directions too. This could go in some really bad directions. The one that's being discussed now, which I don't take all that seriously at this point, is that there's a movement among House Republicans to nominate Donald Trump as Speaker of the House, which is possible. Legally possible. You don't need to be a member of the House to be the Speaker of the House. Again, I don't necessarily take that seriously. Then again, what a morality play that would be for Democrats of playing with fire on this stuff and sort of leaving it to Republicans to quote unquote solve their own problems. So Melissa, we've gone for a half hour, which is longer than we expected, but this is a historic development. It raises a lot of questions about the health of our government, of our democracy, polarization, 2024 and the upcoming election. Just one more note I want to make, Melissa, is that we'll see what else comes out of the White House. Their first statement on this vote, I thought was responsible, and somewhat tellingly. And again, this could all change. They may be doing some overnight polling, making sure they're on solid political ground, and then coming out tomorrow with statements about that are in line with what House Democrats are saying. But their first statement that came out from the press secretary did not offer an opinion on the wisdom of House Democrats' vote. It basically just expressed the White House's desire for Congress to get a speaker in place so that Congress could get back to work, the House could get back to work as soon as possible and be a partner with the White House. I was really pleased with that. I thought that it preserved Biden's ability to say that at least in this scenario, like, he's not playing games with our democracy. He's not playing with fire here. And again, unless some sort of clarity develops about how this is going to turn out, I hope that's the position the White House continues to take, which is this is a House deal, and this is not. This was not a White House Biden-driven strategy.
And I just want to say, just the very last thing I want to say, because some folks might be thinking this. There are many cases in which I see procedures go down, protocols get followed, and I think, oh, that's our democracy at work. That's just how it is. Things have been followed, rules have been followed. This would not be one of those cases.
No.
The good does not come out of this.
I don't think so, Melissa. I really don't. And again, we're more than happy to say.
I'm very happy to go to in a few weeks say, actually.
Yeah. But I just want to be clear. It's not just a matter of this somehow turning out positively. It's also a matter of what was the risk? What is the risk of it not turning out positively? So I can imagine somehow this turning out well. But again, I can imagine in a lot of ways it doesn't. And, what degree of confidence do Democrats have going into this that will turn out well? Again, not just for their electoral hopes, not just for disempowering and making really putting Republicans through the ringer, but what is the degree of confidence Democrats have that this will turn out okay for the country?
And it's all
I'm
over a budget.
I'm not seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not seeing that confidence. I'm seeing a lot of complacency to say, well, this is Republicans' problem. And that's not sufficient for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we've gone on for over a half hour here, but we just wanted to do this kind of episode just because it's such huge news, and we'll have, we think, repercussions that reverberate. Yeah.
So I should just say, Melissa, I think we'll do an episode this weekend. Mm-hmm. If not, in terms of what we're delivering promised content, we kind of have an episode in the bank at this point. But I expect we'll be back this weekend. Then again, you're traveling this weekend, so maybe we'll figure that out. But hope that this episode is helpful to you as you think through what's transpired in our politics over the last 12, 24 hours.
I think this is the point where I say bye.
This is where we are. Bye. Bye.
It's the end of the weekend, but I still wanna turn up. Yeah, I still wanna turn up. All I want is to go again, but you ain't picking your phone up.